to welcome you all to this meeting, which we've hosted today to introduce the new operational metering forums that are to be established under the Retail Energy Code from June 2022. Just a few bits of housekeeping before we do start. You'll note when you joined that this event is a recorded event. We'll be publishing the event recording later this week onto the REC portal and also via our REC Code Manager YouTube channel. So please do ensure that any conversations that are held at this event today are appropriate for a public audience. If there are things that are sensitive, of course, we'll be discussing issues of health and safety matters, for example, at operational meeting forums in the future. But today, let's keep things high level. We'll talk about the principles of how these will be moving forward into the future. As I mentioned, please do ensure that you keep your cameras off and your microphones off, and unless you want to raise a question later in the session. I will ask our presenters to put their cameras on so that you can see their lovely faces at the right times, but just to protect the bandwidth, we're expecting up to and potentially over 100 people on the call today, so 100 videos I think would probably crash all of our respective internet connections. We do want this to be an event full of engagement, full of your opportunity to give us feedback and to ask questions. We've got two ways to allow you to ask questions today. If you want to verbalize your question and talk to the group, if you can raise your hand using the Teams functionality, my colleague Amy will be keeping an eye on Teams, and she'll find an appropriate place to interrupt the presenters to allow you to ask your questions. In terms of administration, given the numbers though, it may be easier if you were to write your question down. We do have a spot for Q&A at the end, and if you'd submit your question on Slido, you also have the opportunity to have your question upvoted by your colleagues who are also on the meeting today. So those questions that are deemed more relevant to the entire group can be sort of promoted to the top, so we can identify and answer those questions that are really pertinent and important for a large amount of people on the call. And as I mentioned, for those who are here at 10, if you want to get onto Slido to answer the polls that we've got throughout the session, or to provide your questions, there's two ways to do it. There's either an S logo on the top of your Teams channel if you're on the Teams desktop app, and that will get you in without leaving the Teams window, or you can visit slido.com on a separate browser or a mobile device and enter the code 292616, and as we move through the slides and as we activate polls throughout the day, you'll automatically be displayed the poll for you to provide answers to. And at the end as well, we'll use Slido to gather your feedback as well as Q&A, so give you a chance to let us know if we did anything well or not so well, or ideas about how we can run similar events in the future. Helps us with our plan for continuous improvement. All right. And that, just a reminder, there's a QR code there, so you can quickly take use your camera to scan and enter the appropriate place in Slido, or join slido.com with that QR with that code 292616. But every time we move to a poll, we'll present that information to you again. Okay, for those of you who don't know, my name's Paul Rock, and I'm the head of communications at the Retail Energy Code Manager. The Code Manager, for those of you who don't know much about the REC and the REC arrangements, we're the entity that's appointed by the Retail Energy Code Company, and our job is to make sure that the REC operates smoothly. We run things such as the change process, the committee arrangements. There's a team within the Code Manager who look after the performance assurance function that sits under the REC. The REC portal is administered by the Code Manager. Pretty much every way that you engage with the REC on a day-to-day basis is underpinned by the Code Manager who's been appointed to deliver it. Today I'm joined by 4 of my Code Manager colleagues, and you'll hear from all of us throughout the course of the day. Catherine Ward is the chair of the REC Metering Expert Panel. and it's also involved in some other metering contracts that within the industry. Many of you may know her from her roles within the Association of Meter Operators, or the old MOCOP or MOCOPA before it became the MOCOP under the REC. Bradley Mercer is the committee secretary for the metering expert panel, and also for a number of the other committees run under the REC, including the REC change panel. Anne Perry is here as the change delivery manager with responsibility for many elements of the REC change process. And Amy Lawper-Ball is here supporting me today as our events and communications officer, and it will be Amy keeping her eyes up for any raised hands on Teams and helping to administer your questions as they come through today. And just a final bit about me, in my role of head of communications, I've got three primary responsibilities. I'm responsible for making sure that the committee infrastructure within the REC is run effectively, that the chairs are appointed and the secretaries are appointed into their roles. I'm responsible for ensuring that the REC portal is functional, it stands up, and there's a change process to enable us to develop the REC portal and innovate upon it. And I'm also responsible for the other communication channels, such as the weekly bulletins that we put out, such as our social media channels, and the events such as that which you have attended today. All right. Moving forward now, just to talk on why we're here today and what the scope of this session is. Fundamentally, we are making some changes to the way that some of the aspects of the metering expert panel meetings are to be managed under the REC from next month. We'll talk more about what the metering expert panel is for those who aren't aware at this point. We'll talk about the identified opportunity for change and improvement on the way that the metering expert panel meetings are run today, and how we plan to move forward. We'll talk to you about how you personally will be able to engage with the forums in their involved structure and attend the sessions and contribute. And how the agendas for the meetings are to be defined, prioritised. And finally, we'll talk about how those new forums will interact with the formal REC change processes that are sort of formalised and defined within the REC schedules, and how therefore you can have a say through these groups on how REC change is designed and formed. In this next section, I'm going to talk a little bit about, for those of you who have little to no understanding of what the REC is and where it's come from, I'll provide a very brief overview. I'll then talk about what the role of the metering expert panel, or the MEP, is today, and talk about how we're delivering the operational metering forums moving forward from June. But Amy, I'll just pause in case there's any hands raised on Teams at this moment in time.
No, I can't see any, Paul.
All right, fabulous. Of course, as I said before, you do have your opportunities to ask any questions on Slido as well, and we can take them at the Q&A session at the end. We plan today, me and my colleagues, to speak for probably just shy of an hour, leaving a good half an hour for questions at the tail end of this session. All right, just a quick reminder then about what the Retail Energy Code is, where it's come from. For those of you who don't know, on the 1st of September last year, the REC arrangements were formally established into the industry landscape following an Ofgem programme to establish and consolidate several of the legacy retail code arrangements. Those arrangements included the MRA, which is the electricity switching code, its gas equivalent, SPAR, and a number of metering codes, including MACOPA, SMECOP, MAMCOP, AMICOP, and I'm forgetting one other, ASPCOP, as well. So all of those sort of operational codes came together, and it was a lift and shift exercise to fundamentally formally establish them into that consolidated REC code. And since 1st of September, we switched on the REC change process, and we have been progressing change through those arrangements under the new REC arrangements. And later on, my colleague Anne will speak around some of the changes that are currently in the life cycle of the REC that do affect the metering arrangements. The REC would also be the vehicle to facilitate the faster switching arrangements. And later this year, in July, there will be a significant update to the REC called REC version 3. And REC version 3 will introduce central switching arrangements into the REC that are being developed through another off-gen program at the moment, the switching program. So we're currently mobilising, engaging with parties around readiness for version 3 in July. And those parties that are required to be a party to the REC and have obligations under the REC covers electricity and gas suppliers, network operators in both the electricity and transporters in the gas world and their independent counterparts. MEMS, it's a new term which covers sort of MOPs and MAMs from the old world, metering equipment managers. And also the DCC, the Data Communications Company, is required to be a party to the REC in its role as the switching operator body as well, particularly pertinent past REC version 3 in July. So that's the REC. That's a little bit about, very briefly, about where it's come from and where it's going in the short term as well. And moving on now to talk a little bit about the metering expert panel. We call it MEP for short, and it's one of several committees that were turned on the 1st of September 2021 when the REC went live. The other committees are the REC Change Panel, the Technical Expert Panel, or the TEP, the Performance Assurance Board, which has specific responsibilities around, you guessed it, performance assurance, and the Green Deal Panel, which actually hasn't met yet and will meet when the time comes where it needs to consider changes to the Green Deal arrangements that sit under the REC. But the Metering Expert Panel itself, it has a primary function, as it says there, to support the progression and development of change proposals raised under the REC, which have a direct impact on metering arrangements. At the bottom of the screen, you can see a small graphic which attempts to sort of summarize very simplistically the scope of some of those impacts. There are 3 particular schedules or parts of the REC which the Metering Expert Panel has a specific focus on. They're the Metering Operations Schedule, the Metering Accreditation Schedule, and the Metering Code of Practice. And a lot of those sort of combine some of the arrangements that have been previously found in the legacy codes. The industry, had the opportunity before the REC went live in September last year to nominate and then elect the representatives that you wanted to sit as members on the Metering Expert Panel for a 2-year term. And those are the people who have the responsibility to vote on the progression of change, to represent the breadth of the industry about whether changes being put through the process are objectively the right thing for industry, the right thing for a consumer. And as I say, there's a 2-year term which will end in 2023. So over the course of the next 12 months, we'll be starting the arrangements for the next terms going onto the panel. I'll talk a little bit more about who those representatives are in a minute, so you can understand who you should be speaking to if you need to get a word to the members of the MEP. Documentation for those MEP meetings, including all the agendas, papers, minutes, and a log of the actions, are available via the REC portal. And if you don't know what the REC portal is or how to access them, again, I'll go on in just a minute or two to talk about how you would access that information. And historically, up to now, attendance at those meetings of the MEP, where we talk about changes going through the process, has been specifically for those elected members, or where external expertise outside of that group is required to help us make decisions. The chair has the ability to invite external parties to join. And that's how the Metering Expert Panel has operated up until this point. The MEP members, as I mentioned, these are on your screen now. Some of them will be on the call today, and welcome to those that are. But we have 2 representatives from the supply community, which is Steve Mulangani and Carl Dennis. We have 2 representatives from the metering equipment manager community, Eric Fowler and Jeff Huckabee, both of whom those of you who are AMO members may know, given their respective roles within that trade association. And we have 2 representatives from the network operator community covering gas and electricity, Paul Abreu and David Mitchell. Paul Abreu, those of you who may know from the ENA, the Energy Networks Association. And these people aren't elected to the metering expert panel to represent their organisations. They're there to represent the industry as a whole. They're there because they are understood, recognised to have knowledge which allows them to consider the whole market when making decisions about the suitability of change to be entered and to progress through the process. They're not there to represent a fuel. They're not really there to represent their community. They're there to objectively have a thorough understanding of the entire market and be there on behalf of their community and be able to make objective decisions about the right thing for industry and the right thing for the consumer. They also all appoint alternates as well. I won't list them all out here today, but in case they're not available to attend a meeting, they have alternates that can step in and are equally qualified to do that job. We have our first poll of the day. So if you'd like to go across to slido.com and enter that code on the screen now, I'd be really interested to know, before I go and talk to you through a bit about the rec portal and how you can access those papers for these meetings, whether you have visited the portal so far to access those papers, or whether you know how to access those papers. It's interesting to see that there are certainly a fair few of you on the call today who maybe haven't accessed before, or they don't know how to. Most of you have, which is great to see. You're already engaged with the portal and the process. But we will take an opportunity, given that there are a few on the call today who either haven't been onto the portal yet or aren't sure of how to get onto the portal. We'll take a short moment just to demonstrate to you exactly how you need to do it. Because going forward, as we move forward with the operational metering forums, it becomes more relevant for you to know how to access the portal, how to log on, and how to access the right area to download the right papers at the right time. I'll move ahead with that now. So this is what the portal looks like. I'm not on the portal now. This is just a screenshot. So excuse me that this isn't going to be particularly interactive. But when you log onto the portal, or even when you don't log onto the portal, I should say, even as a non-logged in user, you'll be taken not to this page, but to a page called My Dashboard. But you'll be presented with this left-hand menu when you get to that page. To get to the metering expert panel area, you'll need to navigate to the committees tab on the left hand side. And when you do try to click on committees, it will need you to log in to be able to access this part of the page. If you haven't got a login, you're not registered for a rec portal account, it couldn't really be easier to do so. All you need to do, where it says my name in the top right hand corner here, it will say sign in if you're not already signed in. You click on that and instead of signing in, you'll be able to create your own account. And there's a really simple wizard. It takes about 30 seconds to a minute to set yourself up and verify your email address. But once you click on committees and once you've logged in, you'll be presented with this page here. This is the high level dashboard of committees and sets out, you'll see all the committees that are established under the Retail Energy Code. If you're a member of the Metering Expert Panel, I probably won't need to tell you this, but you'll also see the Metering Expert Panel appear in the My Committees module in the top here. But if you're not, there'll be nothing in here and you'll see a list of committees down here below. If you click on Metering Expert Panel, you'll be taken through specifically to the Metering Expert Panel workspace dashboard. And there are 2 tabs you'll see on here. First of which you'll know you're in the right place because you'll see at the top here that the Metering Expert Panel is listed and the next meeting date will be displayed on the screen. I've also amended this now so it will also display not only the next meeting date, but whether the meeting will contain one of the operational meeting forums that we'll speak about very shortly. But you'll see 2 tabs, the first of which is a calendar of committee dates. This isn't particularly useful at the moment. I'll put my hands up. We are evolving this module and it will provide more useful information. But what you really need to navigate to, what you'll be interested in, is navigating to the meeting documents tab. And under the metering document, under the meeting documents tab, although this has changed very slightly now, and Bradley's going to talk about why later, but you'll see a top level folder, and it won't look like this anymore. There'll be a top level folder with an option to go into metering expert panel meetings. Once you click on that, you'll be presented with this display, and you can navigate through to the meeting that you're looking for information for. So if you're, for example, wanting to look into the meetings held in 2022, obviously you click on the year, and you'll see this displayed with each of the meetings in order. If you want to get into the meeting for the 12th of January, you click through to that folder, and you'll be presented with this. Now, if you're not a committee member and you try to navigate through to the committee member folders, you'll be able to access them, but there'll be no information in there. That's restricted information for those who are committee members, either because there is some commercially sensitive information stored within them, or the information has been deemed to be only relevant for committee members to look at. But anyone can access the information stored in the folders marked as public. So if you wanted to access all the pre-meeting documents for the public meeting on the 12th of January 2022 at the moment, what you could do, if you click on the three dots on the right hand side of the screen here, you have the ability to download the entire folder from the portal, and that will download a zip file directly to your device. Otherwise, you can click into the folder itself, and you can see on a file by file basis what documents are stored within that folder, and you can also choose to download them sort of individually as well by clicking on the three dots on this side here. And that's how you access the pre-meeting documents, and there's a separate folder for the post-meeting documents. Pre-meeting documents, the papers and agendas being published 5 days before the meeting. A headline report of all key decisions being made at the meetings being published into the post-meeting documents folder a day after the meeting. And minutes for the meeting being published initially to committee members 5 days after the meeting, and then eventually to public a month following the meeting, after committee members have had an opportunity to scrutinise the minutes and make sure that they're accurate. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next poll now, and now ask you again whether you feel confident about how to access the meeting papers on the REC portal. Hopefully those of you who already were will let us know that you remain confident. I haven't confused you. For those who are still unsure, and there's at least one person there who said they're not confident still, I would encourage you, if you do need to access the portal and you're struggling to reach out to us. There are a couple of ways to do so. You can get in touch with me directly. You can get in touch with me at paul.rock@recmanager.co.uk, or you can also get in touch with us via the service desk, and your query will be sent to the most appropriate person. And to get in touch with the service desk, you can either log on to the service desk and raise a ticket on the REC portal, or you can email inquiries@recmanager.co.uk, inquiries@recmanager.co.uk, and you can ask for some support about how to access the papers there. And later on as well in this session, Bradley's going to speak about how the administration for the operational meeting forums will happen. It will use the same processes in the same structure, so hopefully any questions about that may be answered as you move through. Thank you very much for your feedback. So we've spoken now about where the opportunity, or what the metering expert panel is, and we want to speak to you about where we identified the potential need for change, or an opportunity for change, to improve the way that the MEP meetings are run going forward. When the initial arrangements for the REC were designed, the committees were designed in a way that was planned by RECO and by the code manager to be cost effective for industry, to not require industry to sit around a table once a month for an entire day and talk about things that didn't move arrangements forward. And I think there may have been a slight misinterpretation about what industry wanted from some of these committees, probably particularly so on the metering side, which tends to be very technical, very there are lots of safety considerations and best practice that really the industry seemed to derive a lot of value from the legacy arrangements. And the feedback that we've been getting really since September has suggested that industry still misses having access to an open forum to get round a table and thrash out ideas and talk about issues and have an opportunity just for that more open discussion. And to address this, we're introducing a new metering framework. And in practice, what is going to happen is that once a quarter, the metering expert panel is going to have an extended open session. Once a quarter, there'll be a gas session, and once a quarter, there'll be an electricity session. So each gas and electricity will meet 4 times a year separately. And that invitation to attend those meetings is going to be opened up to all REC parties. Everyone who is a supplier, a network, a MEM, under the REC will have an open invitation to come along to these meetings and to engage in the discussion around the table. These will continue to be virtual meetings. One of the principles around the way that the REC would function, the way the committees would function, would be that we were we're still trying to reduce the burden on industry. We want to introduce a level playing field for everyone so that those who aren't able to travel have the same opportunity to engage in the meetings as those who are. We always look to use the right technology to enable these virtual meetings to happen as effectively as possible, and we continue to continuously improve that. But we are trying to reduce the cost for you guys for engaging through the REC. We're trying to reduce our impact on the environment by reducing unnecessary travel flights to host meetings around the country in a physical environment. So hopefully you'll come on board with our approach to continuing with virtual meetings. But these new groups will be known as the Electricity Operational Meeting Forum and the Gas Operational Meeting Forum, which we'll know as the EOMF and the GOMF moving forward. And a little bit about the new meeting schedule. So today, REC MEP meetings, the metering expert panel meetings, happen on the second Wednesday of every month, and they'll continue to do so. So on the second Wednesday of every month at 10 a.m, usually lasting about 2 hours, there'll be the closed metering expert panel meeting, which will continue to focus on the progression of change that is being raised and being taken through the process. However, on a quarterly basis, one meeting would be extended to include the open Electricity Operational Metering Forum, and one meeting each quarter would be extended to include the gas equivalent. They will be planned to start at 1 p.m. and they'll be planned to conclude no later than 4 p.m. So a 3-hour open session. And we'll publish agendas for those sessions 5 working days before the meeting, and we'll circulate minutes from those sessions 5 working days following the meeting. The first operational metering forum will be the electricity opener, and that will happen on the second Wednesday of June. That's the 8th. So invitations to contribute agenda items and to attend that meeting will be going out before too long. You can expect to see that within the REC Weekly Bulletin and emails going out to contract managers to encourage those people who are interested to let us know that they'll be attending those sessions. And then in 3 monthly bursts, so in September, December and March next year, the electricity operational meeting forums will be held. And in July, October, January and April, we'll hold the equivalent in gas.
Paul, can I just stop you? Sorry, we've had a few questions come in.
Lovely.
So the first one, going back to MEP papers,
Yes.
will I get access to the non-public MEP papers as an alternate?
Yes, alternates should all have access exactly the same as committee members do. So for the purpose of the closed MEP sessions, alternates are considered fundamentally committee members. If there is somebody who is an alternate today and hasn't got the access they believe they should, if you can get in touch with us following the meeting through Bradley or myself, we can make sure your portal permissions are set up in the right way to allow you to have access. That yes, for the purpose of the closed MEP sessions, if you're an alternate, you're considered to essentially have exactly the same access levels as a standard committee member.
Thanks, Paul. Just a few others. So reviewing the public committee documents, for example, the MEP and change panel, I've found the information too general and basic with no general direction of discussions.
Okay, that's interesting feedback. It's not feedback that we've really had before. It's a new one for me, but we do consider, or we do continue to consider, how we can make the information as accessible for you and relevant for you as possible. If you haven't yet accessed the headline reports that come out the day after the meeting, the headline reports attempt to provide quite a clear and concise summary of the decisions that are being made and the next steps that apply for changes going through the process. So if you haven't looked at the headline report, they may be relevant for you to have a look at. But also individually, the meeting papers, which frame discussions that are had at the meeting, they do try to include context about where papers, where items for discussion have come from, and where the next steps for them to be taken forward are. If when we publish meeting papers you've got any questions about the content of a paper, or you need more context or anything like that, please get in touch with us. Either the committee team or the change team, if it's relevant to change, are really eager to get in touch with you. And it's also worth noting as well that as rec parties, as I assume the vast majority of people are on this call today, and probably the person asking the question, but apologies if not. But every rec party is appointed with an operational account manager. That's a member of the code manager team who is there to specifically help your organisation interpret the rec arrangements, support them through the life cycle of the rec. And if you get in touch with them as well and give them feedback or seek support from them, they'll be able to reach out to us, find the right information for you, and provide you with quite a bespoke service about interpreting the information. If you don't know who your operational account manager is, again, reach out to us through the service desk and we can provide you with that information and put you in touch. It's a really useful service, and some of the feedback we've got from parties about how effective they found the OAMs has been really positive. So I do encourage you to look into that if you haven't yet.
Thanks, Paul. Next question. Why are names and acronyms the opposite way round? I'm not sure what this one is relating to, I'm afraid.
I'm not too sure either. If there's
Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Paul, it's Mark. Yeah, go on to the next slide. I think it's now the one where you introduced the two groups and gave their names.
This one.
There. So you got Operational Metering Forum Electricity, Operational Metering Forum Gas.
I'm going to tell you why, Mark. There's a good reason for this. We realised that the acronym OMFG might not be a very suitable acronym for a group, given its alternative meaning. So late in the day, before the slides went out, we changed it to the GOMF rather than the OMFG, and I didn't change the gas to be at the front in the body of the text. So apologies for that.
No problem.
It will be the gas operational meeting forum going forward. Anything else, Amy?
Yeah, just one more. So will rec MEP members be expected to attend? I think this was related to the last slide that you showed us.
I think yes. I think the plan for the rec MEP, as you're aware, is that the rec MEP meetings will happen in the morning from that 10 till 12 session, and then the operational meeting forums will happen in the afternoon. When we were developing the plan for the metering expert panels at the start of the rec, when we went out and sought nominations, the MEP was intended to be an all-day meeting. So at that point, I think the MEP representatives were aware that there was a commitment of them around that time. I think it's really important that the rec MEP members are aware of the context behind industry sentiment that's being discussed at these groups, so that it feeds into the decision-making process, so that they can better understand the drivers of their industry, the issues that are being brought to the table. So it will be a strong encouragement for those that sit as representatives on the MEP to be attending the operational metering forums as well. Anything else, Amy?
We have just had a statement in the meeting chat saying it would be handy to see how many documents lie behind each folder, because sometimes it can be difficult to, and you can spend a lot of time clicking into folders to find that they're empty.
It's a good suggestion, and what I might look to do, I think there's a way, for example, for you, if you haven't got permissions to see the documents in a folder, not to see the folder at all, and it might make it easier and more easy to lay out. And I'll look into that straight after this session. Otherwise, in terms of displaying something on the folder, it might involve a bit of development, but certainly I can take it as feedback and look into what we can, what is the art of the possible in that case. Yes. All right. Anything else, Amy, or I think I'll move
No,
forward?
you're good to carry on.
Excellent, good stuff. All right, I have another poll, which should have flicked to on Slido now, and I wanted to ask you all the question, but based on what you know so far, whether you believe that you will personally be likely to not attend the OMF groups, as someone has already put down there, or whether you would be likely to attend all meetings of both fuels, all meetings of, or most meetings of the electricity or the gas, or whether you'll be likely to attend most of them. Just really trying to gauge here how many of you we're likely to see at the meetings and help us to plan for the arrangements moving forward. It's really good to see that already at least a third of you on the call will be planning to attend the electricity group, another third looking to attend both groups, and we're talking about 45 people responding so far, so it looks like we're going to get a really healthy level of attendance, and I'm sure engagement and agenda items to be contributed. This is really positive to see, and for those of you who aren't currently interested in the operational meeting forums, based on what I've said so far, in a little bit, Catherine, who chairs it, is going to speak around how we're likely to define the agendas for those sessions. And it would be interesting to know whether there is something from you guys there that would be more likely to make you attend if it was on the agenda. But we'll get to that as we move forward through the slides. Thank you for your feedback. I'm going to pass over now to Anne Perry. I mentioned Anne before. She's the change delivery manager within the Rec Change team. And Anne's going to speak to you a little more about how this new operational metering groups are likely to interact with the formal Rec Change process, and some of the key items that the change process has seen move through it that are related to the metering arrangements from go live to the current day. Hi, Anne.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for that.
And there is a poll, isn't there, before we start? So just before I let Anne talk, I've put another poll on here, just so you can give a bit of feedback before we start on your level of familiarity today about the Rec Change process. Are you really engaged, like I expect many of the Rec MEP members on the call today are, or do you're not so sure about a lot of the elements, or do you frankly not have a clue about what Rec Change is and need some more guidance on the issues? So we can see here that while there are maybe 1 in 5 people who are confident that they thoroughly understand the Rec Change process, a good sort of 80% of people on the call today at least need some catching up on certain areas of the process. So hopefully Anne will be able to give a bit more guidance on that over the next 5 or 10 minutes. Anne.
Yeah, I think it's really useful to see kind of the output of the slide. I think we recognise that we've probably got a real good mix of people who are on the call today, and actually some people are really actively engaged, but others may not be. This session isn't necessarily to give that end-to-end overview of the change process, so I am going to talk a little bit around at a high level what the change process is trying to achieve. But there's lots of information out there for people to access themselves and to find out around what the change process is trying to achieve, how it works, the key engagement points and what those process steps and engagement points are. And so what I'll do is highlight those to you. However, if people do have a real interest in learning more about the process and specifically how they can engage and their organisation can engage, feel free to reach out either directly to me or through Service Desk, and we're happy to share information, to share knowledge, and really try and make sure that people are feeling that they understand the process and are feeling engaged. So I suppose thinking about then the change process and the interaction with the metering operational forums, I thought it was just useful to just give that overview of what the process is trying to achieve. And as part of the code management team within the change process, what it is that change process enables us to do. So from a code manager perspective, it enables us to really plan and prioritise the change agenda. So that is trying to be more proactive in what is it we're trying to achieve, and how we are then proactively raising change proposals ourselves as a code manager to address issues or to explore opportunities. We're also there to respond to issues that are being raised or change submissions that are coming through. And then for each of the change proposals that we have, we're then setting the plan for the progression. So that is how we're then going to take that through the analysis, the solution development, the assessment activity. And the key thing for today is how are we then going to utilise industry SMEs, groups, forums, such as the Operational Metering Forum or the MEP as a committee. And that is for us to get input, to seek views, and that is something that we then determine on a case-by-case basis. What the change process allows us to do is really take the change proposals through the governance that is set out within the change management schedule in a formal way, and ensures that we are appropriately progressing and addressing all the way through up to securing approval from the responsible committee. And that means then we can then move from change into release. So that's kind of the overview. If we can move on, I'm not going to talk through this in detail. So this is the end-to-end change process. It kind of highlights those key interaction points. So where the code manager is doing an activity, so the bar at the top, the key steps and the key formal process steps in the middle of that diagram. And then at the bottom there, it just highlights within the process, the engagement points that we really want people to be aware of, and these are the opportunities to shape how that change is progressing. As I've mentioned, there are different ways that you can find out more about the change process. So there is a change management user guide, which has all aspects of the change proposal process. It takes all the way through from identification through the process through to that change being approved. There's also the Rec Wiki as well, where there are some very specific questions that are being answered or topics that are covered. All of that can be found on the Rec portal. So I would say is we're not necessarily covering it today, this end to end, but there's definitely lots of information out there that will give people the information that they want to, if you are trying to find out a bit more about how you can engage or how your organisation can engage, or basically how you shape that change proposal as it moves through the process. We can, yeah, thanks, Paul. So what we've tried to think about is what are the ways that we can see that the operational metering forums can interact with the change process. There's really two key ways that this can happen. So the first one is where we see that whether there are issues or opportunities that are being raised for discussion in the forums. So out of the discussion and the debate, where there is something that's identified, there's a change proposal that's needed. So an issue has been identified, and as a forum, it's agreed that something needs to be progressed to address it. That will then feed through into the change process. So that can be an attendee of the forum themselves raising a change proposal. It could be that the code manager decides to raise a change proposal on behalf of the forum, but basically that will then take it through, and then it will feed through into that formal process. The other way around that kind of first feed through from the forum into the process is where there are issues. So this is where the code manager support or rec support is needed to progress and understand and explore that issue in a more formal way. So it's recognised that there is an issue to be addressed, but actually it needs more input, it needs more exploring, it needs analysis to be done. And that's where from a change team perspective, we can provide that support. And then at the appropriate point, we will then transition that from an issue where we have a better understanding of the size, the scale, the cause of the issue, and then move that through into a change process. And then the second interaction point is where actually, as a change team, where there is an active change proposal or an issue that we are exploring, where actually we will seek to get input from the forums. So this is to help us to size or scale or develop a change proposal. I think what we recognise that the forums will have some real key experts from various organisations, and it's a real opportunity for us to tap into that expertise and to use that so that the change proposal that we are progressing and developing takes into account that expertise, and the changes are then appropriate, more robust, but also people are much more familiar, at least the attendees of those forums and their organisations, about what it is we're developing and where that input has come from. So I think those key interaction points, changes coming out of the forums into the process, and then also the change process and the change proposals themselves, utilising and being able to share information, tap into expertise within the forums. Information sharing is a real key benefit for, ideally for the change proposals themselves, but also for the change team as well, ensuring that we've got all the information that we need to develop robust, appropriate solutions.
Yeah, and just a point from myself on examples, for example, examples where the code manager might look to secure input from the forum, and indeed not just the code manager, but Reco within that level as well. Many of you may be aware that Reco is currently managing a metering code consolidation project. We've written out through the OAMs to contract manager for MEMS recently, also through the AMO as well, and through the metering expert panel. On the potential changes to consolidate the different metering schedules, the MOCOP, the MCOP schedules, the AMICOP schedules that came across, into a single consolidated schedule with a potential consolidated auditing scheme at the end of it. And it's very much Reco's desire, and indeed the code manager's desire, once we get to a defined change proposal stage, to be able to engage with the operational metering forums, to seek their expertise, to seek their comment, their input, to shape the design of what the arrangement looks like going forward. Presently, we don't really have that body. We have a small MEP group, which is only 6 brains, but with an operational meeting forum, we have the ability to engage many more people through a more collaborative route. And I know that it's very much Reco's intention to make full use of the framework through this forum for that purpose.
And we've had a couple of questions come in, if you're okay to answer those as well.
Sure.
Thank you. So the first one is a comment from Dave Wright. And it says, for electricity, there needs to be a clear demarcation in the responsibilities in relation to the COPs between BSC/Elexon and the REC. And
I think that's a key statement, that there does need to be, absolutely, and we will work very closely with BSC where there is sort of crossover between the codes. But you're absolutely right, it's how we make sure, and we'll be clear that what's covered under the REC, what is the responsibility of the REC to develop and progress. And yes, where there is that we need to work closely with BSC, then absolutely we will, but we can make sure that we're clear on where those responsibilities lie for where the obligations sit, basically.
And within the electricity group as well, I fully expect that Elexon or a BSC representative will be a regular invitee for these sessions to make sure that there is a joined up approach to anything that does impact across code.
thank you. And then, a couple more questions. So, will the tracker be updated to incorporate where a change was initiated so that the relevant GOMF or EOMF can track their process?
So it is something that we will consider how is the appropriate way to capture that. So we are looking at how within the change register, what other information that we need to include there and how we can capture that. So that is something that we'll take forward and just make sure that we're clear on where it's come from and also how the forums can keep a track of those items themselves. So it could be that we do it through the MEP or it could be through the change register. We'll take that action away, but we're conscious that we do need to give that visibility. So we'll find the most appropriate way to do that.
Thank you. And then finally, what's the difference between MEP and these forums for steering change in the change proposals? Should there not be a similar forum alongside change panel?
So I think Paul kind of referenced this, that what this will give us is the real technical expertise that that may not necessarily be required for changes that go through change panel. So I think from a MEP perspective, it is a kind of small group of experts who we will use in a similar function to helping to provide input, their views on changes as they go through. But MEP does have a much more formal role to play within the change process, which ultimately is the decision-making body for those change proposals under their responsibility. And so, you know, there is a similar role in the helping to bounce ideas off, to get input, to understand or present a potential solution. But when it comes to the MEP in that governance role, that is where there is that real differentiation. So we potentially be using the forums to provide more of the helping to ensure the solution, get input into shaping that solution, and then MEP is that decision-making forum.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think the group, the way that the MEP is set up as a small body, allows agility of decision making, allows them to be representative and steer and make timely decisions. The frequency, the number of people in the operational meeting forums, it much better sets it up to be a group for dialogue, a group for knowledge sharing, and that's the intent that we want to have. We want these forums to be feeding in, to be debating, to be raising issues, and then the decision making to stay with that small agile group that's set up with that specific purpose under its terms of reference.
And then, thank you. We've just had one more come in. Should Elexon be at MEP to help avoid code clash, like they attended IREG, for example?
They'll be at the operational meeting forums as an invitee, I'm sure, and they do currently attend the formal metering expert panel meetings as well, so that when there is you know, a cross-code issue or anything like that, they are there to contribute at the right time.
I can see that we have a hand up. Bear with me. So Colette has her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that point to say that we don't wait until we get to meetings to consider the cross-code impacts, that we actually have a mechanism for assessing cross-code impacts as soon as changes are raised, and that behind the scenes, all of the code managers work together to make sure those cross-code impacts are identified before we start impact assessment processes. So just wanted to reassure people that that was the case.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Colette. So just moving through, conscious some of this text is really small, so we are going to be sharing the slides. But really just wanted to give a bit of an overview to say that once change proposals have been raised, one of the key activities that we then need to do is to prioritise those ideas, those issues, to understand what is the appropriate time in which to take a change proposal forward. So we do use specific criteria to assess the impact of addressing that issue or delivering an opportunity. So this relates to kind of consumer impacts, financial benefit or operational efficiencies that will be seen, the impact it would have on the ability for regulatory or legal compliance and alignment with the RECO strategy. We also consider the urgency of the change, so what is driving the need to progress at speed. So for example, if there is direction from Ofgem, such as licence condition changes, or things such as CSS Go Live or REC version 3, those will drive a level of urgency. So what we do is, through the criteria and the weighting that's built into the prioritisation matrix, we then determine a priority status, and that is something that we then use to have a look at the portfolio of a change that we've got to determine when and how change proposals should be progressed. It's also an opportunity for us to then, before we then set out the plan for the progression of the change, we would then also have a look at what else is going on in the change landscape so that we can look at synergies. So if we're going to look at an area of code or a particular process, it gives us an opportunity to understand the priority and understand what else is out there actually that we can group up into more efficient ways to develop change. And so we will do that as a change is raised, assess the priority and the urgency, and then also look at what changes we've got either in flight or planned that feels appropriate to group. And ultimately then that leads us on to develop the forward work plan, which sets out for all of the change proposals and the issues that we have in flight, how and when are we going to progress these? And that's set out then in each of the change proposal plans, that plan for the progression. Now, some of the changes that are lower priority, And if we can just go on to the next slide, it kind of sets out the heat map. So these are all the change proposals that we have in flight. So what we would look at is, actually, can we group some of these? For the lower priority ones, actually, is it appropriate to park these whilst we develop some of the more urgent change proposals? And we have seen more recently some more urgent, some more high and critical change proposals coming through, specifically related to the readiness for CSS go live. So actually that means that we've then had to have a look at the rest of the portfolio and look at what is appropriate for us to develop and when. So it's not about stopping activity, it's more about having robust plans that say we need to deliver changes in an appropriate way, that deliver the best benefit for consumers, or to deliver our kind of obligations, or to support parties with delivering obligations. And so therefore we'll then have our forward work plan, our plan of activity that sort of sets out what we're doing and how. And what I've called out within the heat map, the ones highlighted blue are the ones where there's MEP interest, or where MEP are the responsible committee. So we've got 5 change proposals and 3 issues that are under responsibility of the MEP. What we've seen since REC Go Live is a real mix of types of changes that have come through under the MEP's responsibilities, from really simple changes such as the introduction of an updated complex site supplementary form. But we've also seen some more complex one, or potentially more impacting to parties. So a couple that we've got R15 that's in flight at the moment. So this CP proposes to place obligations on electricity MEMS to take all reasonable steps to ensure that remote comms are fitted and working for city advanced meters and all advanced meters. We've also got R21. So this proposes a new role, and the processes and the governance for this role. And this is where existing accredited MEMS will be allowed to energise and de-energise when they are not the appointed MEM. And this is through the introduction of a new safe isolator provider role, which is a cross-code change that was developed through the cross-code steering group, or recognised through that. And then we're working closely with TACUSA on that one. So we've seen a real mix of changes, but you can see that we have a bit of in the heat map, we have kind of one that is high priority, driven by a need for preparation for half-hourly settlement, but we have got some lower priority issues, and actually we're taking that through MEP, just confirming with them around, is that priority appropriate? What is the best way to take forward these change proposals where there isn't necessarily an urgent need? And so for any issues or any change proposals that will be coming out of the forum, we'll take this same approach where we will assign a priority status. We will then look at what we have within the whole portfolio of change and what we can accommodate and what is appropriate to group. And where we then set out a plan for change, it's the change panel that agrees a plan. However, we would make sure that MEP are engaged and aware. And if there is a need to deprioritise or to change a plan, it's MEP, where they are the responsible committee, would do that replanning with us to make sure they are comfortable and agree that any risk or any potential benefit, it is appropriate to plan it in that way. So I don't know if we've got any comments or questions, Amy?
Yes, yeah, so we have a question for you. As the operational metering forum parties are for REC parties only, does your REC portal login need to be linked to your business to be able to join the meeting?
No. No. All you need to access the meeting papers is to have a REC portal account. You don't need to be associated with an organisation. You just need to have a portal login. Anyone can create a login. Anyone can access the open papers or the operational metering forum papers that will be hosted on the portal.
Thanks, Paul. And then we've had a couple of comments come through the meeting chat. So Warren has said R31 is not only for DNO LV CT, it's for trigger points for all CT supplies for all parties.
So I think I'll just check the name is right, that it isn't necessarily an old name that we've got there, but it is that commissioning trigger points. Yeah, absolutely right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the title is an old title. That's all.
It is,
That's
yeah.
right.
It's a kind of the table, I think, hasn't been updated yet. I think Colette is the lead on this one, and yeah, she's absolutely made sure that that is the right title. So I think I'll take that's me with the wrong title on there.
Thanks, Anne. And then just one more. R21, is there a document available in regards to the de-energisation independently to the supplier?
A document, I'm sorry, a document in what sense? I'm trying to, let me see if I can find the comment.
If the person who raised it wants to unmute themselves and provide a bit more context, we can probably answer that now.
Hiya. Yeah, it's just in regards to that R21. It says allowing REC accredited MEMS to de-energise and re-energise suppliers points independently of the supplier. And it says there, is there a document that we could use to sort of back that up?
So I think this change proposal is going through at the moment. So I think it is. So yeah, it's on the REC portal. You can find that change proposal. So within there is information. So it isn't necessarily a set solution. At the moment, it is going through the impact assessment, and then we will set out that final solution. With this one, I think it's to be aware it isn't necessarily at that stage of it's all defined. Here's the document. It is going through, but I think Paul's.
So for those who don't know, any change that's going through the change process has within the change and release page and the change register has its own change proposal plan page. So by navigating to this page through the change and release page, you've got access to all the information associated with this change. It sets out the problem statement, the requirements of a solution. It provides you with accompanying documents, so you can see the change proposal plan, the initial assessment report that's been carried out, and any milestones associated with the change plan and when they're likely to take place. So if you haven't navigated to this part of the portal yet, if you're going through change and release through the change register, you can navigate and find the change proposal page for any change that's either closed or live within the change proposal process.
Just for clarity, we've actually been out for impact assessment and consultations closed last week. So we're just collating all the feedback on this at the moment, and we'll be producing a report shortly with the collated responses of the various sources of feedback that we've had.
Thank you.
No worries.
That's it for questions at the moment, Anne.
So this last bit then is really just about saying there's lots of different ways to find information around the change management process itself and those change proposals as well. So one is the REC portal. There's a lot of information on there, support information to find out about the process, such as the wiki, also the change management user guide and the change and release pages, which Paul very kindly demonstrated there. So there's lots of information in there. So you have the change register, the change proposal pages, also where you can access the consultations and also the impact assessments as well. So lots of information within there about the changes themselves, the process, but also how to find out about the process itself. If it is that you have any questions, you can contact service desk. So if you have any questions about the process itself, a change individually, or you want to sign up to the change weekly bulletin or the general REC bulletin, you can do that through service desk. The change proposals themselves, you can submit a change proposal via the change release page on the portal and access the change registers. MEP and the expert panel has demonstrated how to access those. So the change proposals that are going through, where they're under responsibility of the MEP, access the committee papers. It will have on there where we're asking for approval or asking for decisions or voting. Those papers, the change proposals will all be within those committee space. And then use this forum that's going to be in place from June to raise the issues, have them discussed and feed through into the change process. We see this as a real key feed for us and also a way for us to share information as well. So I think we see the interaction between the forums, the forum members, MEP and the MEP members and the change process has been really critical to the success of taking forward any issues that come out of the forums.
Thank you, Anne. Another poll question for you now, based on what you've heard from Anne and today so far. How confident on a scale of 1 to 5 are you about how you can engage with the rec change process and access that relevant information, with 5 being your highest and 1 being you're not at all confident? It's really interesting to see whether that's whether what we've spoken through with you today has helped your confidence levels. And as I said before, for those who still aren't confident, there are routes for you to continue to engage with us. Please speak through the service desk. Please explore the portal. Please use your OAMs to have a conversation with us. And hopefully, as this group finds its legs, you'll find this to be a really useful way to take that information out of the change process and input into the change process as well. Amy, are there any final questions on Anne's section before we move forward away from this poll?
No, we are good.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your feedback again, and thank you, Anne. We'll move forward now onto the administration of the operational metering forums and how it will work in practice. And Bradley's going to, I think, take you through some of the aspects of how we'll use the portal to store information and make it available to you related to these meetings.
Thanks, Paul. So yeah, just going to give an overview of how we're going to sort of on my side as a secretary of the operational metering forums, how we're going to be administering the meetings and papers and agendas, etc. So to begin with, if all interested parties, the way we're going to be sending out invites will be through a distribution list. So I would ask if all interested parties could send an email to committees@recmanager.co.uk advising if you'd like to be on the distribution list for the GOMF or the EOMF or both. I'll send an email out to all attendees of this meeting or this event today just to remind them after the call. As Paul said earlier, the meetings will take place remotely via Teams, and the calendar invitations will be sent out to distribution lists that I'll manage. The OMF meeting papers will be published through the REC portal 5 working days ahead of the meeting, so much the same as we do with the REC MEP and the REC change panel. Interested parties will be notified when papers have been published via email from the committee's mailbox. It will just be a sort of I'll send out a link to where the documents are saved on the portal and where you can download and view those papers. We do so if you're on the distribution list for the change panel or the MEP, it will work the same as that. The OMFs will have their own dedicated action log, which will be available on the portal. So within that action log, we'll include the title of the action, due dates, and also who owns that, whether it's from the code manager or a member taking on action or the chair, for example. So we use something similar in our other meetings. So we're just we can't do that through the portal, but we'll have a live Excel spreadsheet on that area of the OMFs. We will also, I'll be taking minutes of the operational metering forum meetings, and they'll be published on the portal 5 working days after the meeting, and we'll be seeking to approve those as final at the following meeting next quarter. And these minutes will capture, I'll just be looking to capture the key discussions, outcomes and actions through those minutes. So plan is not to take them as verbatim, to try and make them as user friendly as possible, but just to make sure I capture the key points of discussion. And now, Paul, if you could take us through to the REC portal, I'll just show you what we've got in the because from the screenshots we showed earlier, the MEP space has changed very slightly, so I'll just run through what's on there at the moment. So once you're signed into the portal, you'll be presented with this page that you've got here, where it welcomes you. We've got the REC wiki and the calendars. If you click onto the committees tab on the left-hand side, that will take you through to the committee management page. On here, you can access all of the committees. So on the right-hand side, we've got all of the committees under the REC if you wanted to engage with those meeting papers. But the one we'd like now to look on is for the meter and expert panel. So as Paul mentioned earlier, we've got at the top here, we've got when the next meeting of the meter and expert panel is, and also when if there's an operational metering forum as well. So we've got to change that acronym round slightly, but it says there, yeah, we've got a meter and expert panel meeting on the 8th of June, with a electricity operational metering forum taking place afterwards. And to access documents, if you click through to the meeting documents tab, we've got 3 folders here. So the first one we've got is the REC meter and expert panel. So this will be for the folders for the formal session that's been running since September. We've got a folder here for the operational metering forums, which is where the documents for this group will be saved. And we've also got a metering consolidation project documents folder as well. So the bottom one there is where all documents related to the RECO Code of Practice Consolidation project will be saved, so you can view those documents in there. And it also says we'll also include in the titles when there's comments or feedbacks required on those ones. So if we go back to the operational metering forums, we've got 2 folders within this main folder. So we've got a dedicated one for the electricity and a dedicated one for the gas. Within there, the folder structure will just be sort of the year and then the date of the meetings. With also the specific, the actions log will be kept in that overview folder here underneath the 2022. And then back into the main body of the folder, we've just got a document at the bottom there, which is contact the Omf Secretary. So that just includes my contact details. And yeah, if you want to get in touch with me about anything related to the operational meeting forums or committees in general, my email and phone number's on there.
Thank you, Bradley. Has anyone raised any comments, Amy, from Bradley's update?
No, nothing at the moment.
All right. Let's move through then to the final part of the session today, which is defining the agenda for these sessions. Catherine is the chair of the metering expert panel and will be the chair of the operational metering forums, and want to speak to you today about our plan for populating agendas and your opportunity to contribute towards them.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Good morning, everyone. So for those of you that don't know me, I am Catherine Ward and I've been chairing the REC metering expert panel since September. For those that don't know me, I've worked in the industry for too many years now, over 20. I joined Eastern Metering Services when the market opened in 1997, and I've been here ever since. I work most recently, people probably know me from the MACOPA and the transition of MACOPA into the REC. So I was a registration authority for that. So yeah, that's me. I will be chairing the operational metering forums alongside the REC MEP. The operational metering forums obviously are being implemented at the request or at the feedback from industry. So these are your sessions, your forums to raise and discuss items that you're finding of interest. Anything that's causing you a concern or a difficulty can be raised onto the agenda. Because if you're having issues and difficulties, then probably other people are as well. So please feel free to reach out and contact us about anything that you think might need to be discussed or if you're sure needs to be discussed. The forums will be a place where you can discuss between other types of parties, so MEMS, DNOs, suppliers. They'll all be represented there, so you can get a view on any items from those representatives. The metering expert panel representatives that we covered earlier, they're also responsible for helping with the discussion points. So you can speak to your constituent representative for that as well if you want to. And those guys are helping us to shape the agendas for the first forums. If you've got an agenda item, please send them to the secretary. We'll need them 8 days in advance of the meeting, obviously, so we can construct the agenda appropriately. But don't wait until then. Please send them as soon as you can to the committees at Rec Manager mailbox. We will talk to you about that agenda item and discuss the prioritisation of it appropriately, and obviously with other items that are on there, whether it will fit and where it should go on the agenda. So you may be talking to me, you might be talking to Bradley, you might be talking to one of the other Rec Manager representatives who's interested in that agenda item. The types of agenda items that we're expecting are those that's similar that would have been discussed at the other codes before they were integrated to REC. So the MACOPA Party Working Group, the MAMCOP. Under MAMCOP, there was working groups to discuss specific items. So anything that you would have raised at one of those, you can raise at this operational forum. And we expect those to cover these types of items. So safety discussions, anything that you want to raise with your peers and ask opinion about, best practice processes. So where you, again, want to discuss the way other people approach things, and so that we're delivering efficiently to consumers. metering related information for dissemination to other parties, metering related changes we've already discussed quite a lot, and then there'll probably be some reporting trends and items around audit we would probably expect to come onto there at some point as well as we move through the year. We've already talked about the change quite a lot, but you know, things like consolidation of the metering codes, any changes to what is currently the MCOP, the MOCOP, or the smart metering installation code. ASPCOP, what is ASPCOP? Though anything that would usually be under those, you can sort of bring to the light to the forum. So please do let us know. As I say, this forum has been put in place for you guys, and we welcome your input to it. I will be chairing, and obviously we'll need to make the final call on the priorities so that we can fit the meeting into the timescales, and that we also have the right parties in the room for those discussions. So if an item requires an expert from a specific area or with a specific set of knowledge, then we will make sure that those people are in the room for the discussion. If you're going to put an item on the agenda, we will also expect you to be in there for that discussion as well. So we will discuss that with you. That sort of touches on what we discussed earlier with like Alexon being present for things that have cross-code impact. You know, people from DACUSA, people from Bays and Ofgem, we can engage with all of those as long as we have advance warning of what the discussions are going to be. Yeah, please contact us. So Brad and I are your main points of contact, but anybody that you know about under Rec MEP will welcome your input. So please let them know. Do use the committees at Rec Manager mailbox, because that means somebody will pick up your query in a timely manner rather than an individual person perhaps not being about. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight into the agendas. Does anybody have any questions raised, Amy?
Yes, we've had a couple come through. So do you already have the agenda items for the June meeting? Can you give a view of what will be discussed in that session?
So that agenda will be constructed over the next couple of weeks. As Paul says, the notification will go out imminently for that first meeting, and you will be invited to input items. We have items that we're aware will need to be discussed, but we haven't finalised that agenda yet. It will go out with the communication. So certainly, obviously, metering code consolidation will be one of those items, and we will touch on all those items that Anne presented as under the MEP on the change slide. So just to give an overview and get people's views on where they are, explain what stage they're at of the process, so that everybody's engaged in the ones that are currently in the process.
Thank you. And then one more question. Can you update us on providing access to documents on the REC portal that used to be available via Macopa website? For example, party contact information, safety briefs, etc.
So I can't do that. I know there is those documents are available to the REC manager, and there are certain people that are responsible for those documents. So I think we need to particularly identify the ones that you're struggling to find. So if you can drop us a note about those individually, maybe, then we can definitely make it clear where those are published, if they are published, if they're not published, why they're not published, and help guide to potentially whether they're shown in a different way, potentially.
Sounds
Paul,
like
I don't know if you've...
No,
Yeah.
it sounds like it could make if the information isn't accessible as it should be, sounds like it could make a good opportunity for an agenda item at that first
Yeah.
meeting, doesn't it? If it's
Certainly.
relevant to electricity. So no, as Catherine says, if there's any examples specifically, get in touch with us via the service desk. If there's something that isn't available, it should be made available. If we can raise a ticket, we can make sure the relevant part of the code manager service is aware of it, and they can make sure the information is populated as it should be.
Hi, Paul. It's
Hello.
Paul Abreu here. Can
Hi.
you hear me?
Yeah.
I raised a job at the service desk on precisely this point, and I did list a whole series of documents that the sort of DNOs would like access to, and I'm sure the AMO members also, the meter operators, would need access to, that we had under Macopa, and some of them might be available. We just can't seem to find them. So
Okay.
I'll need to pursue that ticket that I raised and just get a progress update on that at some point.
Yeah, that's fine. And I can make sure that's moving forward on your behalf as well, Paul. If you chase that up, and while it might not be me who's the one that's publishing it, I can certainly make sure that we provide the framework for it to be published in an accessible way. So yeah, let me know. I'll chase up separately, but if you let me know of your progress to the service desk as well, and I'll hit it from my angle at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers, Paul. Before, I know there probably is another question. I just want to give you the opportunity to while we're fielding those questions, and please be putting your questions into the Q&A as well for the next 5 minutes. I want to give you the option to suggest on this screen here if there's anything specific that you, or I don't mean too specific because we want to keep this information high level today, but any items that you would like to see discussed on a high level on these agendas, so we can start to see the type of things that the community of industry parties wants these agendas to include. Particularly if you're one of the people who earlier on in the session said that you were you wouldn't see value in attending these. Well, why would you attend it? What would provide you value if it did appear on the agenda? So just a couple of minutes to think about that. Amy, were there any further questions that are raised that are relevant at the moment?
We don't have any further questions, but I can see that Jeff Huckabee has his hand up.
Fabulous. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Paul. Thanks, everybody. Jeff Huckabee, sort of member and former chair of Macopa. I just want to reinforce sort of one of Catherine's agenda slide, really. We spent a lot of time talking about the change process with Anne earlier, but not everything that's discussed at these forums will necessarily result in a change, and we might not want them to result in a change. Some of them will be related to safety. So, for example, in the chat, Nick Doddridge has put something about phenolic cutouts. Won't go into it now, but that is a good example of something that's being discussed at Decusa, at the Bayes Smart Metering Operations Group, where, because it's a safety related issue, would be useful to be on the agenda, and I will be sending something through to add it to the agenda for people to understand. It probably won't result in any changes to REC, but it might result in changes to the way that MOPs work, and so it's a useful item to have as an agenda item that won't result in a change, but will result in better information throughout the industry. And so I just want to reinforce to the people on the call that don't just submit agenda items that you think are going to result in a change, submit those that you think might be actual useful information as well. And the only last thing I was going to say was thank you to REC for agreeing to them. I know that from a Macopa point of view, both the AMO and the ENA found these sort of discussions useful, and we'd like to thank the REC code manager for listening to its members really and making this change. So
Thanks,
thank
Jeff.
you.
It's a really important point. Yeah, while the metering expert panel is focused on them formal decisions that progress change, and has a good reason to that it's set up that way. This group is very much about furthering that general conversation. It's getting all those people across the industry under a single roof that trade associations don't tend to offer. I know a couple of trade associations have been looking at whether groups should be established to help understand REC issues, but it doesn't provide that same forum of network operators, MEMS and suppliers all being under the same roof together, being able to share across industry those things that are affected. Thank you all for your contributions on this word cloud. It's really interesting, and we'll take this away and analyze some of it. We are very close to 11:30 now, and I think we've progressed well with time because we've answered a lot of questions as we go through. But I'm going to flick away from this slide quickly and just ask whether there are any final questions. I've got time for one or two before we do wrap up. But if there's anything burning a hole in someone's mind, if you did ask your question on the Q&A, we might be able to just squeeze one in. I'll give you another 30 seconds or so just to think of any. And while you're thinking of those questions as well, just wanted to remind you that we have recorded this session today, and we will be making it available on YouTube. So please share it with your colleagues to share the information about the establishment of the groups with those people. Please do look out for the emails that will be coming out around adding yourselves to the distribution list for these meetings, to the emails that will encourage you to let us know you're attending and to contribute agenda items as well. And also on Thursday of this week, the REC Code Manager will be releasing its latest podcast. And this month's podcast is also about the establishment of the operational metering forums. You probably won't learn too much new if you've been here today, but if your colleagues, rather than sitting through an hour and a half's recording of an event, want the basics in a 10-minute podcast, Catherine, Bradley and I went through and spent 10 minutes talking, and that will be searchable on Spotify from Thursday lunchtime, and we'll put a note on the REC portal when that goes out. And one point, not so much a question, but a point that's come through, and I presume that's from our RECO colleagues, is just a reminder that stage 1 of the metering code consolidation work is now available to review. It's on the portal, on the metering expert panel page, as we showed you earlier. Comments to be submitted back by the 21st of June to RECO, and there's a field in each worksheet which allows you to put comments into the worksheet and for you to return them directly, and it just gives you an opportunity input. While not all comments might result in change, it at least allows you to put your voice forward, to make your views clear, so that RECO can help design the arrangements as they're taken forward. So please do take a look and take the opportunity to respond.
Is it just worth showing people where they can find that on the portal,
let's just remind you very quickly where that was. So again, back into, it's logged me out, see here, so I need to log back in to get into the committee space. But if you log into committees, if you go through to metering expert panel and metering and meeting documents, there's a folder here called metering consolidation project documents, and clicking on that will take you into the stage 1 comments responses by 21st of June, and there's 2 documents in here, each of which we encourage you to have a look at and respond. And I think the responses go to, is it Rob, are you on the call? Is it your email address?
It is indeed. So yes, if you send it on there, there is comments on there. There is a little bit that shows where to put it, but back to myself at Retail Energy Code. So Robert.Short, Retail Energy Code, and then I'll review each of those documents, and then we can put those into the final draft.
Thank you very much, Rob. And we've got a stage 2, which is coming out not too long from now, is it as well, I think, Rob?
That's correct. In the next couple of weeks, there'll be a stage 2, and that review period would lead us until the end of June.
Excellent. We'll make sure that the word goes out once that's available. Thank you very much. We've reached the end of the session today. It's just gone past. Just a final poll from you. I want to thank you very much. Your engagement today has been superb, and the numbers that we've got on this call as well, it shows the appetite for this, because this is the most well-attended event we've had under the REC, I think, since Go Live. There were some pre-Go Live events that provided some good numbers as well, but post Go Live, this has been spectacularly well attended. And it would be really good to hear from you about whether you have got some benefit out of today's event, and if you can provide that feedback on the form that's available now on your Slido, that would be amazing. And if you wanted to leave some qualitative feedback for us as well about what you liked about today's event or what you thought could have worked better, really keen to hear from you, and the more information we get from you, the better the future events will be. But from my point of view, I've really enjoyed speaking to you about what we're going to be doing over the course of the next month or two to set up the electricity and gas operational metering forums. I hope you understand more now about what those agendas are going to look like and how you can contribute to them. I hope you understand how you can access information about them on the REC portal, and how that you can hope to better engage with the REC change process through attending these groups, through being aware of the output of these groups, and through contributing your own ideas and discussion points as well. But thank you very much. I'm going to leave the poll open after we end the call for anyone who hasn't yet given their feedback to do so. Otherwise, I'll circulate the recording of this event within the next couple of days. Feel free to share it, and I'm very much looking forward to inviting you to the next operational meeting forums and to other co-manager events in the future. But from me and my co-manager colleagues, we're going to say goodbye now and speak to you all very soon. Thank you very much.